Beyond.
No,
come on.
Beyond.
It was going so well.
It was
so
going
nicely.
better when I started doing that.
Welcome. Do you want to do it?
Beyond.
Not that. The rest of it.
Welcome to Podcast Beyond, episode 657,000. We've had a great couple of centuries now. We missed a bunch of big anniversaries, and you're all very cross about it. But I'm here with my good friend Max Scoville, Zach Ryan, and the man in the back room. His name is Barrett. He loves Beyond and he loves PlayStation. We're talking about some big stuff today. First off, Far Cry 5. We've been playing a lot of it. It's selling really well. But what does that mean for you? Did you buy it? Well, then you helped those numbers get bigger. Look what you did. After that,
this is you're doing a really good job.
Yeah, it's almost like I got a hosting title.
Yeah, no, it's great. You do really well because nobody interrupts you. It's cool.
You can say Beyond.
It's because he freight trains through. Yeah, he just
freight train
keeps
through.
on
Yeah.
going.
I'm loud and boisterous and from the East Coast.
I'm quiet and timid and from the East Coast.
I have allergies in my nose. No, let's talk about Far Cry.
Okay, are we good?
do
Can
that?
we do this now?
We can do that.
Yeah.
All right, let's do it.
Yeah.
All right, so we love this game.
This weekend was beautiful outside in San Francisco. 3-day weekend for us.
Gotta stop doing
It was
that.
gorgeous, but
Yeah, who
I didn't
cares?
see any of the weather because I just stayed inside and played
games.
Far Cry all weekend.
Yeah, I want to say, like, as somebody that didn't grow up in California and then moved here, it's really awesome living here because it is nice out all the time. But if you live somewhere cold and miserable, you're really lucky on weekends like this one because when you're really into a game, it's so helpful to look outside and just see and be like, I can stay home and play video games and not feel bad about it. It was nice enough where I'm like, oh, I gotta go outside. I should just go buy a coffee, even though I have that here.
Yeah, I just need to walk just a couple of blocks to try and break away from this game. I mean, it got its hooks in me so fast. It admittedly, you and I were talking about it this morning, but it took a couple of hours for it to click for me.
Yeah.
But once it did, oh mama, did I I was consumed by it. Like I would assume that I'm about halfway through the game. I just finished liberating John Seed's area, the southwestern
I'm
portion
stop
of the
you
map.
right there just for our listeners. We're not going to spoil anything.
True.
We just want to talk about playing the game, having fun. Brian, you finished it, and we're putting up a big full spoiler cast
Yes.
on IGN that's
We're
going to
recording
go into
that.
all the story stuff.
Yep.
But yeah, like
Talk about that ending.
It's super fun, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
Zach, how much time do you put into it?
Man, I haven't looked at a play counter, but I would assume probably between 10 and 13 hours this weekend I played. Like I said, I did enough to liberate one area of the map and then started the northern area last night and got a few missions under my belt there. The way that I'm kind of playing it, I mean, if you're familiar with Far Cry, you kind of know the deal. You're liberating bases, you're hunting things. It's a very Far Cry game at its core. But the way I've been doing it is sort of like choosing a base to liberate and then on the way, like just stopping along the way to pick off side quests as they're happening, or like very like almost Breath of the Wild style, where it's like, what's that over there? I'll go investigate that and check that out.
I think it's awesome how much this takes cues from Breath of the Wild, because like you look at past Far Cry games, and there would always be kind of like this sort of second area that you're supposed to unlock that's kind of late game stuff. And it always very much turns you loose and says go wherever the hell you want and do whatever you want. But in this case, they're almost like, hey, you can go one of three ways. Take your pick,
right?
And it's really the whole map is open from kind of the get go.
Yeah, Far Cry 4 very specifically had that big bridge surrounded by guards that you couldn't get across. That you'd get close and you'd poke around and they wouldn't let you there.
And 3 had the second island.
Yeah, and so nothing's really gated off here, which I love. If you're watching the video, you're seeing some gameplay of the only weirdly futuristic weapon in this entire game.
Yeah, this is wild. I've never even seen this gun.
Yeah, so I unlocked this recently.
Oh my god!
And so the cool thing about this game is it's full of really interesting side characters. I think you hit it on the head, Zach, by saying that like it's, and not to evoke too much of Breath of the Wild, but you said to me before we went to get coffee that the sort of like the philosophy behind shrines in Breath of the Wild is present here in the prepper stashes, which are basically like hidden puzzle dungeons.
Yeah,
and I say that lightly, that have perks inside them and money inside them, and they're sort of like treasure chests that getting into them is a kind of a pain in the ass and kind of a sometimes a battle, sometimes a puzzle, sometimes you have to do some like sort of strategic climbing, but it's never just a door you walk right into.
Like Far Cry games have always had those hidden treasure troves, and they always had the climbing puzzles of the lookout towers,
right?
The radio towers, and I like that they've kind of combined the two to actually have treasure that's really worth looking for.
Yes,
it's interesting to me because progression in previous Far Cry games and I guess just Far Cry games in general, has been like hunt 6 deer to get this thing to increase your pouch, or hunt this thing, or kill this many guards with this weapon to do this thing, right? But in this game, it's much more streamlined, where there's basically 2 roads you can take to earn perk points to upgrade your character, and one of them is completing challenges. So it's sort of similar in that it's like, kill 20 guys with arrows, kill 5 guys with grenades, like take out a bear with dynamite, and like all that stuff is really fun and encourages you to switch up the way you play.
Yeah, get out of your comfort zone.
Yeah, it encouraged me to pick up the bow and arrow for the first time, because I'd played probably halfway through the first area without even considering the bow and arrow as an option. But then when I saw that challenge was worth, X amount of perk points, it was like, oh, that's an easy way to pick that up. And so I was just started kind of going through bases, like taking out people with bow and arrows, and came to really like that weapon a lot. Invested some money in some upgrades there. But the other way that they do it is these prepper bunkers, basically, that are you get a clue from liberated folks. Like, you can set people free from the cultists, and they'll tell you things like, oh, Johnny Mayhem up the road has a whole bunker full of stuff, and then it puts a mark on your map where you can search that area and find them. And like you said, like, there's sort of early on in the game there, I came across one where you had to power up a door, like a sealed door, but the basement was flooded. So when you turn the power on, the floor becomes electrified.
Yes.
And you have to hop across the tops of these like boxes and barrels to make your way back to the door without getting electrocuted.
Yeah, which is
open it.
Really unique. I wasn't expecting that in this game.
Right.
That's like, that is so like triumphantly video gamey. And this is ultimately what is kind of a sandbox, but with a story-driven like narrative.
Well, yeah, it's smart, because it's like you're picking up perk points in a bunker stash, and they're in the form of like Field and Stream magazine, or like Great Big Guns magazine, or whatever.
It's weird because it's so hard to say this, but it is a definitely more grounded Far Cry game, in that there's kind of like a weird justification for why everything's there. Like, to find out about new areas where there's great places to like hunt elk or go fishing for trout, you pick up like fishing magazines.
Yeah.
Or like you'll find a map somewhere in somebody's cabin or something.
I was going to say, this is probably the best Cabela's game to date.
Yeah.
It's kind of it also, in a weird way, is kind of the best Far Cry or South Park game to date. Like, it's it's got like it's got kind of different overlays of things that remind me of different things.
Yeah.
Like it does have hunting, it does have fishing. It's almost like very committed to making a serious like outdoorsman stuff. Like, when you say like sportsman,
I was looking through my list of like the unlockable perks that I've done like through challenge-based stuff, and I realized all the ones I had left were fishing. And so like I upgraded my fishing rods. I got some better ones that like have like less like kind of give, and like it's easier to kind of like bring in big fish. And I spent like a couple hours on Saturday just like fishing. And there's parts in that game where you're on like a shore, and you're looking around, and there's just mountains and like trees, and birds go by. And every now and then, like in the middle of fishing, I looked across the road, and there was like, or across the river, and like a bear and a wolf got in a fight, but they were just far enough away from me that I didn't bother with them. Or like some men had a little skirmish up in the hills, and I'm like, this is fucking beautiful.
No, I think that they know that some people
man.
are going to play this, and they just want to like enjoy like the scenic outdoors. Like, maybe they, I don't know, live in a crappy apartment, and they're like, I want some grandeur.
Yeah.
I think the way that Ubisoft has spent the money to render Montana so beautifully is insane.
Yeah.
Like, jumping in a plane and flying over, big sky country in Montana, I mean, it's nuts. Like, it's so beautifully rendered that it kind of reminds me, I don't know how much time you guys have spent like in Northern California, but it kind of reminds me of like Tahoe, Reno area. And so like flying over those forests, or on a quad, like running through the wilderness, like you can almost like smell the pine trees. Like, it's so realistic in the way that everything is laid out, and like so beautifully rendered that it's really impressive.
It made me want to visit.
Yeah.
Brian, I think you said that this is, in a lot of ways, this is kind of the familiar Far Cry game with a fresh coat of paint, but this is like a really, really nice coat of paint.
Yeah.
You know? And I was like driving an ATV across the ground of the countryside, whatever, and I was worried, looking at how thick the trees are together, that would really really just get in the way of ground vehicles.
Uh-huh.
But there are like smaller trees that just explode when you
Right.
go through them. So
Yeah.
you can actually really kind of get a kick out of just, you know what, I'm just going to go off-roading and just really.
They
That's
very
the funny
specifically like made the forest like dense, but not too dense to
Destructible.
drive through.
Yeah. Well, and that's the funny thing about the flying too. First of all, let me take a step back. I think one of the reasons that most of this stuff is so fun, the fishing, the driving, like even the race side quests and stuff, it's all really fun because it's all super arcadey. Like fishing in this game is as easy as like casting out and pulling in the opposite direction and making sure you're reeling in.
Yeah.
And if your line goes red, let go. And like you can catch a fish super easily.
Yeah.
And it, like you said, it's a really easy way to burn some time and earn some extra points that way. And flying is the same way. Like once you reach a cruising altitude, they've put your head on a swivel in this game. So it's like, it's a great way to start at one corner of the map and fly across and just kind of like take the time to look out over and be like, oh, there's a silo that I can blow up and mark that. Or, oh, here's another base that I haven't been tipped off about. Like I'll mark that and come back for later.
There's also like there's so much to do in this game that it's that kind of magical thing where talking to friends about it makes it really fun because every one of us is experiencing missions differently or in different frequencies, or some of us are bringing different guns for hire, which are like the weird, very highly personality driven characters that you unlock in this game. And I believe there's nine total.
There's 9 of them.
Yeah, and 4 of them or 3 or 4 of them are animals, which is great. You know,
Fangs for hire.
Yeah, fangs for hire. So like at any given moment, you have this like woman who's like flying a helicopter around, just making sexual jokes, and on the ground you have a cougar, like an actual cougar, and they're like all friends with you, and you're running around. And I don't know, like I did a mission this morning that I was telling you guys about, and then you guys did missions that I haven't done yet, and like not spoiling anything, but I'm in the post game stuff now, and you can go back and do more stuff after the credits roll. And I'm not necessarily having as much fun as I did progressing through everything, because once all of the 3 sort of head guys are all pissed off, doing anything in those regions doesn't necessarily yield you anything but money. And eventually you have enough money to buy anything you want. But I'm still enjoying it because the simple mechanics of like fundamentally doing anything in that game, flying, driving, shooting, are all really fun. So having that core there means that anything they stack on top of it becomes more fun for me to do. If those things were a tedium, I wouldn't. So it has me all of a sudden being totally all in for any DLC they throw at this game because it's just fun to shoot.
Yeah, what I like is we took a look at the weird kind of like the matter converter weapon that was in there for a second, which there's like a whole side quest with like a scientist and you help him UFO hunting or whatever.
Yeah.
I like that that's kind of a hint at the fact that like 2 of the DLCs, one is zombies and the other is Mars.
It's on Mars, yeah.
Yeah, so like we're going to get some crazy space weapons.
Also, one of the characters is constantly having Vietnam War flashbacks.
Yeah,
so
that's the other
like,
DLC.
You can see where all that sort of folds in. So yeah, it's cool that there's little like threads to all those in the main campaign and in the main game.
We've spent a lot of time with Far Cry 5 talking about the sort of like the setting and the political messaging and all that, but really kind of end of the day, it's
that
just
stuff falls by the wayside so fast.
Yeah.
Like for a game that was marketed in a way that was like really gave us the impression that it was out to make a statement. Like that stuff drops off. I mean, you can play for literal hours and not see a single thing about any of that sort of narrative thread.
Like
so
Republican conservatism. Yeah, none of that stuff comes in at all, really.
Almost to the point where like when you get back into it, when, like taking out John Seed last night and going through that last level, was kind of like so story heavy that it felt out of place given the rest of my experience. Because like in the, let's say 12 hours that I've played of this game, 90 minutes of it has been very narratively driven,
and then so that's the thing. Like the story in this game quite literally takes you out of the game. Like there are the way the narrative folds in is that with all 3 of the characters basically have this kind of like story-driven justification to tranquilize you or shoot you or drag you into a bunker.
Hit him with the bliss.
Yeah, and you could be in the middle of doing the most fun mission of your life, and then all of a sudden this thing happens to you. So like even when you don't want the story to happen at all, it comes for you.
I know the thing that you're talking about, and in the one area that I've cleared, it happened to me twice, and that is very annoying.
Yeah, I actually found it kind of distracting. And it's weird because it's like, there has been a lot of talk about the politics or lack thereof in this game. And I've seen some people say like, oh, that's just like people in their bubble trying to, confirm their own political beliefs into this thing. I will say that it's not about that at all. To me, it's more about the presence that tonally this game sets up in the first 20 minutes that I believe it doesn't deliver on. And that has nothing to do with politics. I think that it starts with a very grim, very serious thing, and then it kind of just veers away. And I love it for that.
No, so it's
I do love it for that.
You look at the past kind of like the main entry Far Cry games, and like 3 was all about the definition of insanity, and 4 was all about Pagan Min and Karat and everything. And I feel like 5 has a lot more Blood Dragon kind of sprinkled in the margins. It's got a lot more sort of self-aware, goofy stuff.
Yeah.
And it's much more like there's a whole mission where you have to get bull testicles.
Yeah.
And it's like I think if they'd led with that and leaned a little bit off of the sort of the, I don't know, look, religious iconography and cultist stuff and the, American, politics, it would have been.
I think a lot of it is our brains and everyone's brains kind of filling in the blanks of like, you're like, well, okay, it's a cult in Montana and they practice outside of a church, and they have religious iconography in the forms of their own
Iron Cross and
crosses
like that,
and Bibles and stuff like that. And so therefore they must be blank.
Right.
And it's sort of confirmation bias. But on the flip side, there are missions that dip into Trumpism a bit. There is a mission called Make Hope County Great Again. I tweeted out a screenshot of the mission, and a guy in a red hat is basically like, "There's a lot of disenfranchised liberals out here. We should rile them up and get them to vote for me." And I'm like, "That's funny." Like, I'm not offended by that. I find that funny. There's also another mission where you have to secure a P tape from like a shack that has
bunker,
a Russian star on it, and you're sort of like, okay, that's on the nose, but all that is handled is so slapstick and so goofy. And again, and I said this in the last time we talked about this, ultimately this is a game about a guy that loves guns. The first thing I did in this game was buy a machine gun that had an American flag on it. Yeah. And all of his friends open gun shops. The primary goal of this game is to murder things and kill animals, which is about as anti quote unquote liberal SJW as it gets. So I think everybody sort of has their biases going into this.
It's a South Park video.
Yeah, exactly. So like everyone gets made fun of. It's all okay. The game is fun, and that's really all that matters.
I like the idea that like before this we were like, maybe we should steer clear of the political talk about this game, and it was like, yeah, whatever. We'll just
I think what we're speaking on specifically is like that there is a very defiant lack of that stuff in this game, and I kind of love it for that. And I think like in general, if you had told me months ago that the story in this game would actually be intrusive to the point where they're like grabbing you and physically yanking you out of like a cool mission you're on, I wouldn't have believed you, because I think that would have been the part I was so excited for. Yeah. I knew the gameplay would be awesome. But the fact that like I want to just mess around in this game and it has to keep reminding me like, oh, well, there's also this stuff going on, it gets a little distracting. But like I said, I finished it and I keep going back for more. Because I think even jumping in and just doing some side missions that I missed the first time around.
So have you messed with the Far Cry arcade stuff?
No, I'm waiting.
I haven't done that either.
Play with.
So I'm actually waiting for that to get a lot more popular.
Right.
Because I think I dipped in for like a minute and there was really nothing there. Yeah. And so I'm going to wait. Because I feel like if I go in like 2 months, I remember playing like Little Big Planet like 6 months after the game came out, and it was just fucking bonkers in there.
Yeah. So for people listening at home, the arcade mode, of course, is basically the multiplayer user-created component, which is very Blood Dragon-y, very silly, and undoubtedly people are going to go in and make all kinds of crazy stuff.
Yeah, I'm a little disappointed from what I'm hearing about some of the assets that they talked about. Like, they talked about, we'll have assets from Black Flag, we'll have assets from Watch Dogs, and it's like a statue or like a ship or like, it's like very bare bones stuff. But there's a ton of stuff that you can get in and play with, and I think some of those user design levels will be really cool. I think at its surface level, Far Cry 5 is very much just more Far Cry, but it makes a lot of smarter choices than previous games. It streamlines things and makes Far Cry even more accessible than it was, in the way that I feel like previous Far Cry games have had, like you guys are talking about, like areas sort of roped off, or complete X missions before you're really turned loose. Whereas in this game, I think I was like 3 missions in and I was doing bombing runs, or jumping out of a plane, or something crazy. Like
you have access to vehicles like that so quickly. It's so cool.
My favorite thing to do, and I've been doing it since like really early on in the game, is I have an assault rifle with a powerful scope on it and a bigger clip so that it like stabilizes my gun, right? And so what I love to do is I'll fly as high as I possibly can above an outpost, jump out of the plane, open my parachute early, and as I'm drifting down, like I just scope and spot, like tag all the enemies.
Yep.
And so then I'll just pick them up,
In the
kill as
sky?
many as I can from the sky.
Yep.
And then if there's like 3 or 4 left, I just send in my bear cheeseburger. Like I
Yep.
have a bear companion, and then he just goes in there and just roughs them up so that by the time I land him down,
Yeah.
there's like fireworks shooting off, and it's like, oh,
I mean,
area
I s-
liberated. And
I
it's
saw
great.
Such a good feeling.
I actually saw a lot of people in Facebook groups and also on Twitter and stuff like that, talking about how the stealth is actually way less forgiving in this game and they get spotted quicker. And like, I genuinely I'm sympathetic to that. I think there's a lot more systems that play this time around, but I genuinely didn't feel that way. Like
See,
honestly,
I completely feel that way. Like
really because I've
there-
cleared like
there-
13 outposts without getting spotted once. Got the little money bonus for it and everything.
As much as I'm loving this game, there are a few things that do kind of bug me, and one of them is the fact that like I feel like you can get spotted so easily, and it just, as a guy who plays, we were talking about how much this game sort of borrows from Metal Gear 5, and as
Which
a guy
borrowed from Far Cry,
of course, yeah. I mean, everything is cyclical. We were talking about how this kind of borrows from Zelda, but I think that honestly, I think that Zelda borrowed a lot from Far Cry 3 and 4. So,
No,
but like one of the things that bothers me is how broken the stealth sort of is for me, because it's not like one guy spots you, right? Like you
Right.
can be at, like, some of the outposts are much bigger than the others, and you can be at the far side of an outpost and get spotted by one guy, and then all of a sudden you see it in the distance, 15 dudes with assault rifles just turn straight toward you, and you're like, well, okay, I might as well just reset,
So,
you know?
I mean, worth noting, because it does have this sort of open approach where it does kind of drop you in the middle, and they're like, go whichever way you want. There is like an order, like there are outposts that are more difficult than others, and there are places on the map that you're supposed to probably check out when you're a little bit higher level or more equipped, and it doesn't write that down for you anywhere. You kind of have to figure it out yourself. I was trying to brute force. I think like the north and then to the east at one point. And there were
the north is not so subtly like the hard zone.
Yeah,
of the game.
they tell you, they're like, maybe go south first, but it's up to you. Do whatever the hell you want. And I think I was sort of trying to like, early on also, there is that kind of Far Cry hook where you do get killed a lot. And you haven't upgraded your health. And you
I got
haven't-
killed a lot
You also
in the first few hours.
You need to figure out what the developer or what the designers really intended with the outpost. And there is a right way to do it. And you kind of got to suss that out. But at the same time, you also have to figure out how you play the game and what your skill set is. You know, because if you're a stealth person, then you upgrade a bunch of stealth stuff. And you go in better equipped.
Yeah, I mean, if you just go in with heavy stuff and you're not really looking for stealthiness, then go guns blazing and have an awesome time doing it. Like with me, I figured out like there's that there's that fork in the road basically where I was like, do I want to upgrade my sniper rifle and bow and arrow? Do I want to like do that, or do I want to like go in with like grenade launchers and rocket launchers? And I found with all 4 weapon slots unlocked that I regularly went with 2 quiet, distancy, like kind of very far away guns, and then 2, well, everything went to shit, let's blow it all up guns. So I had like grenade launcher like leveled up and rocket launcher with all the add-ons and stuff like that. Then I had a sniper rifle and like a pistol with like for close range stuff in case people come running at you. And I found my technique was basically approach a base or a compound or whatever you call them, right, an outpost, and then kind of circle it.
Yeah, that's what
for
I
a
do
little
too.
while from up in the mountains, and then pinpoint exactly where the alarms were, and take those out from far away.
You can shoot the alarms out?
So you shoot out.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, you can punch them, dude.
Yeah.
So
I didn't know you
would
could do that.
So I would take out those with the slingshot or a sniper rifle, and then basically send in my dog to distract 2 people. Hiding bodies is really good. Always staying in tall grass is really good. Setting off detonations to distract people and moving people in a different direction. And then basically once you kill a couple people, circling more around the outpost until like little by little, like the hands of a clock, you're circling this outpost and people are just constantly 50 feet behind you because they always have an idea of where the shot might have come from because they're like, well, that guy's dead, came from up there most likely, which is obviously not the case, but it's a video game. And then little by little, you're like, there's one guy left, and he's just like, what is going on
And
here?
you like toy with them for a while. I like to just throw in some bait, and, you know, and then I go on the other side, so they're all fighting a bear and taking out alarms. And
That's the thing. There's so many different systems to play with, and so like I'm sympathetic to people being like the stealth is like, it's not really forgiving, but also I think that there's so many different more ways to interact with that now that it's kind of on you to find your play style.
Yeah, there's a couple other things that I did want to touch on that are a little disappointing, but don't necessarily detract from my overall love for the game. One of them is the perk system. Like the way that they've streamlined perks in terms of getting the points to reward yourself with perks. That's great. Like finding them in bunkers, but the actual perks themselves, like you can kind of go through and pinpoint like, okay, do I want to jump out of a suit or jump out of a plane and fly with a wingsuit? Hell yeah, I want to do that. Do I want to be able to sneak more easily? Yeah. Do I want to be more efficient with auto rifles and shotguns? Yeah, okay, so I'll get those 3 perks. But I've cleared one area. I have 2 areas and assumably the in-game to go. And I don't necessarily feel like I need any more perks.
No,
like the way that I'm playing the game now, like even because I went to the north, which is supposed to be harder, and even in that area, I feel like a badass already. So I'm not necessarily sure that like I want to find more of the bunkers because I like those puzzles.
Same.
But I don't necessarily need the perks to power up myself anymore because I feel strong.
I've cleared out all the prepper stashes, so I just have a bunch of perk points, and I go into that menu, and I'm like, time to go shopping, and I'm like, oh. I guess you can carry more like knives, or like I taught the stores to sell grenades.
Yeah, I thought that was a weird one.
Yeah, black market stuff.
Yeah, I was like, I don't really need that.
You can craft that stuff.
Yeah, and I have no problem.
Yeah.
It's like that's for somebody who's like really good at clearing out bunkers, but really terrible at aiming remote mines.
Right.
Yeah.
Like that they're wasting them all. So yeah, I'm with you. I think a lot of those perks were kind of crappy.
There is also Outpost Master, which is I think where you reset all the outposts to like higher difficulty.
Ooh.
So if you want to, like Marty was saying, that there's the option to it's effectively a new game plus.
Yeah.
Where's
pretty
that?
much. I think it's just in the menu. I think you can just. I don't know if that's the same thing, but I know that is an option. I think once you finish the game, you can basically like replay them all in harder difficulty.
Yeah, because I finished all those, and there's like I don't know. There's that. I'm at that part of the Ubisoft or any open world game where I'm like, well, what's left? Like racing missions.
Yeah.
Collecting.
It's that tail end of the burrito.
Yeah, it was
That's
like
the best part of a burrito.
You're full.
When I got to the end of Horizon, I'm like, yeah, I guess I'll collect all the mugs. You know, like
Yeah. The other thing, occasionally there's missions that will turn this game into a like corridor shooter.
Yeah.
Which sucks.
Yeah,
Like
I agree.
Because it's an open world game. It's meant
the game
yeah.
is so brilliant when you're setting traps and shooting people from afar or like running through an area and like taking people out. But when it's a Call of Duty sort of like stop and pop shooter, it just doesn't work that way.
Yeah,
and leading to some of the bigger missions, you have to do a couple of these. And I died.
All three, I believe, all 3 of them culminate in like a Call
sort
of Duty
like,
style.
Yeah, and it just like I died so friggin' much in those segments, and like it's fine. Like I don't have a problem with the game being tough, but there were a few times where I was like, okay, that's stupid.
They're so chaotic that they remove the element of stealth from those two, or the option of stealth.
That is the inherent problem with trying to tell a story or have boss fights in an open world game, is that it's something that's tailored to a certain play style, and then
but the only boss fight that I've done is friggin' cool.
Yeah,
like the one where you fight. Yeah.
No.
I'll tell you about it.
Talk about it later.
But,
we got to move on. But obviously,
because one of them is just not. It's just very video game. Because I think you're right. They have to figure out like how do we fit that in here.
That being said, I mean, what's your take on this? Brian, you played like the last few Far Cry's to the very end. Do you like this one a lot? What do you?
I still prefer the setting to 4, and I love the animals in 4 more. I love the like weird rickety gyrocopter thing you got in 4.
Right.
It was very Launchpad McQuack. But I love this game, I love it more than Primal. I love it more than 4 overall. It's my favorite. It's my favorite game this year for sure.
I agree. I think so.
We'll see where the dust settles by the end. It's going to be a big year for games. But
Zach?
3, 5, 4 Primal for me.
That's about where I'm. Where does Blood Dragon doesn't count because
Blood Dragon's like right under 3 if we're counting Blood Dragon.
Yeah,
but
this
like,
is.
I love this game. I can't wait to play through to the end, and then I feel like it's one of those games that I'll dip back into for the rest of the year, especially when the DLC comes.
Same.
I'd love to see like the same thing that Horizon did with their DLC, where they just slid their perk points over and added 2 new columns.
Cool,
I'd love to see some additional stuff coming, and
I'm really happy
really
we're
down
getting
to test it out.
Effectively some more Blood Dragon type DLC with this, and the fact like Far Cry 4 was like, hey, what's the DLC? And it was like, oh, we've added the Land of the Yetis or whatever. And you're like, oh, I guess that's cool, whatever. But this seems like it's actually going to be stuff to kind of wake up and pay attention to. Obviously, we really enjoy this game. If you want to make some friends with people who are also playing the game, head over to the Podcast Beyond Facebook group, which is facebook.com/group/Podcast Beyond. It seems like the game is selling well and people are playing it and they like it, and that's good because fun games are fun.
I saw from Steam it's the best-selling Far Cry game ever.
Damn. That was
Yeah,
so far.
I mean,
so far.
I can't imagine that it wouldn't be. The marketing budget behind this game must have just been astronomical because here in the city, there's just billboards and bus signs. I mean, it's plastered everywhere right
It's
now.
also a good time of year for it too. You know,
for sure.
So they also just announced the PlayStation Plus games for April. Real quick, I want to run through these and some of the games that are out this week. If you burn through Far Cry 5 incredibly fast and you need another open world game with explosions and cars in it, Mad Max is out. That'll be free for PlayStation Plus subscribers this month. This game rules. This is a super cool game that just...
Mad Max, like, this is a game that I've been talking about playing for 2 years. Like, I keep meaning to check this game out, so I'm really excited that it's
power
came
through
out-
like the first 2 hours because they're a little slow, but then it really clicks.
It came out the same year as Fallout 4, Metal Gear Solid 5, and
yeah.
The Witcher, so like it didn't really stand a chance. And I think also just coming in alongside Fallout 4, because if somebody's going to play a game with bikers and leather post-apocalyptic stuff, it's kind of you go with the Bethesda one. But this game is really, really cool. The driving is phenomenal, and it basically plays like an Arkham game otherwise, with some kind of Far Cry style outposts to explore. Also, if you like your cars to go very fast and not explode, Trackmania Turbo is free for PlayStation Plus subscribers. And then there's a little beat 'em up game from Brazil called 99 Vidas, which was actually made by a Beyond listener. So shout out to Bruno.
That one's cross-buy too.
Yeah, so that's Vita, PS3, and PS4, and there were a
That's-
couple other ones for PS3. I didn't touch.
That's 99 Vidas, VIDAS.
VIDAS, yes, which means I think 99 lives.
Yep.
Real quick, out this week, there's a game I played I played a minute of. It's called Minute, MINIT. It is like a black and white, low poly, almost like a 4-bit roguelite adventure game, and the hook here is that
I think it's no poly actually.
Yeah.
It looks like you play with as a Tamagotchi man.
Yeah.
Like,
I was gonna say it's Zelda lookish, but no, it looks like a Tamagotchi.
Yeah.
You're like this little duck, but basically, you have a minute each life, which is kind of insane. It's sort of this panic. It's like when you're poisoned in a game and you're like, I gotta get done really fast, otherwise I'm gonna die. But you have a minute to get to your next objective, and you kind of learn how to work around that. And it's got some very strong sort of Link's Awakening vibes, as well as obviously it's kind of a roguelite, so people will compare it to Dark Souls or whatever.
Does it? How much have you played?
Maybe 10 minutes, which is 10 times
10 runs,
10 lives.
No, it's,
I wonder if that that mechanic gets annoying after a while.
I think it almost definitely does, but in the same way that a Souls game would. Like there's
You think
a
it's
certain
like
level of you do unlock like new homes, which act as like
it's like
campfire
hubs.
type of things. Yeah.
It's like John Mulaney's theory of bell curves and jokes, where it's like it starts off really great and then it gets
Right.
really annoying, but then maybe once you get the feel of it, like you start getting really
It
good
also,
again.
I mean, it seems like a game about kind of valuing your time, and there's a button. If you press circle, you just kill yourself. So if you want to like basically warp back to the next spot and move on, and there's something kind of like very. If you want to feel like you got a lot of stuff done in a game, it's made for that sense,
Yeah.
So it's kind of the opposite of backtracking a lot. It's more like,
neat.
Move on to the next thing immediately. Also out is Adventure Pals, which is a co-op platformer, which our guy Tom Marks played, I think, over the course of GDC, and he said it was something like Castle Crashers, but it's a platformer, very cartoony, kind of an Adventure Time aesthetic. Looks like a good time, and it's got some like good kind of like, it's like a.
It's really goofy.
Yeah.
I
There's, like, a
just watched the
giraffe.
trailer. Like you ride a giraffe. The animation is really great. Like the way that it's sort of this it's sort of like a 2D thing, but there's parts where you're kind of an isometric view and you're riding your giraffe around, and like the way that the giraffe is animating is really funny and kind of cool. Yeah.
There was like that few year stretch where we got the Scott Pilgrim co-op beat 'em up game, and then we got Castle Crashers, and then like they did like what was it? Double Dragon Neon. There was a pretty good Double Dragon, and I was like, the beat 'em up genre is back. Like couch co-op is here to stay, and then a lot of those just went away.
It goes in waves. I think people get sick of it.
I'm
but
always waiting for a new one. So
This looks cute as hell. Also out is a game called Infernium, which is kind of amazing. It is a surreal first-person survival horror game, which apparently is also sort of inspired by Pac-Man, but basically you're in hell and you're being chased by ghosts, and you have to like navigate these labyrinthine mazes and stuff.
Yeah, there's 17 boards, basically like 17 mazes that you can navigate, and there's multiple endings. It looks very spookus.
Spookus?
Yeah, it takes place on some kind of hell island.
Yeah, Hell Island.
I think we all assumed that Pac-Man was in hell the whole time, right?
Yeah.
Some kind of
that's-
purgatory for
that's
sure.
not
not a good time.
It's not a good time.
Aside
Not a
from all
good
the
place.
fruits. But yeah, that's just like I love.
Hell is other Pac-Man.
And occasional pretzels, which is cool. Maybe he's in a mall.
I love any game that like actually commits to something that like high concept. It's like, what if it was first person survival horror Pac-Man, but he's in hell and it's realistic, and you're like, all right, make it. And
Yeah.
they did. Something called Enigmatus 3: The Shadow of Karhala, which is an adventure game.
Imagine my surprise to learn that there were 2 prior Enigmatus
It is
games
the
before
thrilling
this.
conclusion to the Enigmatus trilogy. It's, I don't know, it looks very kind of misty. It always just cracks me up that there are games that just come out like that you just you're like, where was I?
Well, it's funny because I looked up the first 2 games and they're really highly rated.
Yeah.
I've never heard of them at all. They're like majorly popular on Steam, but then watching the trailer for this one, it like looks like a Dreamcast game. It's like, well, all right.
Some people like games like that.
Yeah.
There's a game called Deadland, which is a port of an Android game. If you see that, you may want to check up some reviews. It's basically a zombie first-person game. And then there's a game called Epic Dumpster Bear, which is a Wii U port. I think it knows it's sort of a bad game.
I don't
this
know.
game.
I couldn't tell.
It seems like it has a sense of humor about being a dumpster game.
It looks like a 2D platformer / endless runner where you play a bear whose forest has been destroyed, and so he has to eat trash, but he's gonna like take it back to the man. And so like you're just running through all these like crazy like platformy areas and dodging obstacles and stuff, but you're just playing as a bear that throws stuff at people. It's really weird.
I don't know if you guys like played a lot of those like game maker programs they had in like the late 90s, early 2000s. I don't remember the name of any specifically, but I had one where you could make platformers and like you basically could import characters or make your own sprites and stuff like that. And there's this like weird wave of games that look like they're being made in those programs.
This looks
and
like
I can't
it was
tell if they're like self-aware or if they're like it's one of those things where I'm like, are you doing like an Andy Kaufman thing?
This looks like it was made in Far Cry's level editor.
Yeah.
But they just changed the camera angle to be far away and on the side. You know?
Yeah.
It's just really funny because it's just this bear with his just maw open the whole time. He's just like,
He's a
like
dumpster
everywhere.
bear.
It's
I
great.
kind of love that janky aesthetic.
Yeah, me too.
There are a couple VR games that come out this week, which we'll talk about after a very quick break. We are going to swap Zach out for Caleb Lawson, who has been playing the Wipeout. So, real quick break, and we'll be back in just a second. And we're back, joined by Caleb Lawson. Caleb, you've been playing Wipeout Collection, VR, Pure, what is it? The
Wipeout Omega Collection.
Omega Collection.
VR. And I'm here to tell the tale. I survived.
So,
All right.
Wipeout-
So you added the pure thing? That's
I don't know. I always the Wipeout always has like they have like weird modifiers. I forgot the Omega.
Yeah,
that was
yeah.
the
So
one.
Wipeout Omega is a PS4 re-release of Wipeout HD, Wipeout Fury, and Wipeout 2048, which was the Vita game.
Gotcha.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, which I loved.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just
And I mean, if you haven't played it also, and if you have a PS4 Pro, it's one of the best 4K 60 HDR presentations out there right now.
Yeah, I mean,
It
Wipeout
runs at
is
native 4K 60, right? And the HDR is fantastic. I
it's
mean,
much like Ridge Racer. It's a kind of tech demo of the game. Like
Absolutely.
it's a way to show
I mean,
off
it's an
a piece of
amazing game.
hardware.
It's a great racing game, but
Yeah.
it's also just stunningly
And
beautiful.
when Omega Collection was first announced, I think everyone was like PSVR, and they kind of kept people waiting for a while, but it's finally out. What's your take on this?
Yeah, so Sony sort of quietly updated the game last week with a free patch, and created what I think is one of the best VR experiences I've played for sure. So I've had the one of the Office PSVRs at home for a few weeks. I haven't jumped in, haven't bought one myself. Like, this is the experience that's going to push me over the edge, assuming Dan Stapleton makes me return the unit that I've borrowed.
right.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, you know,
Otherwise-
when you have a free unit, you don't need to buy one, but now
yeah, but
I
it's
want
harder
one.
to steal when you go on a popular podcast and tell everyone the crime.
Yeah. Also, I mean, if you've got the thing on your face and you're at home, you can't see the cops coming in to take you away.
But so like, right, Wipeout in VR, as much as you want to play it, it also sounds like the sort of thing that'd probably make you hurl, right?
Right, because I played what was the I played the racing game at the PSVR launch, and I'm totally blanking on right now. And it was incredible on straightaways, and then you would make a left or a right, and it'd be like, oh
Yeah, and
god.
Wipeout makes you go upside down, and
Yeah.
you're doing barrel rolls, and you're banking.
Which
like,
I did the VR mode in Trackmania Turbo, and I found that to be kind of similar. I actually liked it a lot. That's a very cartoony game, so I kind of stuck with it. But there's a lot of upside down flips and loop-de-loos and stuff like that.
So I played for hours this weekend. Hours.
And you didn't throw up.
I didn't throw up for a couple of reasons, actually. It's handled really well, first off, right? I mean, the head positioning and head tracking is super cool, so that, you know, when you're sitting there in the cockpit and you see the track kind of ramping up in front of you, right? You look up the track and you can see where you're going, or it banks off to the side, right? You move your head around. I mean, the way you would naturally, like, in a race car.
So you can kind of anticipate turns and stuff.
Yeah, and so if you're leaning forward in the cockpit, you're sort of getting that full, almost 360 view of like the racetrack and everyone around you. But what's cool is if you do start feeling a little bit motion sick, if you lean back a little bit in the cockpit actually has like sidewalls on it.
Mm-hmm.
So if you lean back, it sort of pulls it almost like you're watching a screen a little bit more. So like if you get a little queasy, if you get a little overwhelmed, it's really easy to sort of kind of pull yourself out of it a little bit.
So that's one of the things when I demoed Skyrim VR, they were telling me that the secret to like make people not get queasy is basically blinders. And if you start sprinting, you effectively get like you're dying in a game or you're running out of breath or whatever. But in the case of Wipeout, it actually makes sense if you're leaning back that you would have like
gives you the
walls
option,
there.
like in the cockpit, because the cockpit's built that way.
Yeah,
I think it does have like comfort settings too, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's comfort settings. When you start it, it puts on the pilot assist by default. So I'm sure jumping in with full control is daunting.
That's the kind of stuff you got to build up to.
I turned off pilot assist, and I mean, honestly, I think it handles better than it does, in third person. I think, like most racing games, right? Your track positioning and your sort of spatial awareness really changes the way you play it. And the fact that this is a free patch that basically takes the entire game, all those tracks, throws them into VR it's incredible.
Yeah, I love stuff like that because it gives people a nudge to play a game they A, might have missed, or B, return to a game they bought already.
Yeah.
And I think PSVR and VR in general does a really great job of sense of space in racing games. And I think it gets kind of lost in most first-person games because you're like, where are my arms? Where are my legs? Where's all this? But in driving space sim games that are first person in VR, like you look down and you're like, this is my cockpit.
Yeah.
Like this is my little zone. This is my little room.
You're seated, so your brain can trick your body.
Yes, exactly. And you don't feel, I mean, it's a little weird when you're like, I can't move my legs. Like you feel
Or you
paralyzed.
look down, you're like holding the steering wheel. It's like, why is it not moving?
Exactly. So there's that disconnect. But in terms of like being able to have like this little box that you're driving around in, it's really cool, and getting to see all like the little knobs and switches and inside of the dashboard.
Yeah.
Did you mess around online at all with competitive stuff?
No, I have not. Maybe tonight. I mean, I don't really mess around online with racing games often.
That is one place it does kind of gets frustrating with PlayStation VR because you have less people to play with. So I'm curious how that is with something like Wipeout that didn't just drop, and it is a new patch, but it's a game that was been out for a while. So interesting to see how many people are playing.
Looking at my times on leaderboards.
Can you play against people who aren't playing in VR? I mean, I don't know if you would have a strategic advantage.
I don't even know if Wipeout is multiplayer like that.
Isn't it?
I think it's all time.
Oh, yeah, that would make sense.
Right. Okay.
I think it's just leaderboards.
Okay.
Yeah.
I could be wrong. Don't quote me. I don't
yeah.
know. I haven't played it with anyone else, so I just assume you can't. But maybe you can.
All right.
And so it looks gorgeous.
It looks gorgeous. It runs gorgeously. I mean, like, as much of a showcase as it is for 4K HDR, that game is now also a showcase for PSVR.
Are you playing through a Pro?
Yeah.
Oh, cool. Yeah, because there's like a pretty substantial benefit of playing PSVR
That's
through
right.
a Pro.
You said that.
So you're probably getting a little bump. It's like it's not night and day. It's the kind of thing where I'm just like, oh, it's like a little bit better.
No, it's one of those experiences like when VR was first announced and they were first demoing it. It was like, this is the sort of experience that I want.
Right.
Until you can actually do more creative things with haptics and with moving around a space. I think as far as like seated experiences, this one is way up there for sure.
And it's the full game, right?
Yeah, it's the full game.
So that's
it
the other thing that's
literally
really
converts
cool.
the entire game into VR for free.
Yeah, this is not
It's
like
a
some like
$30 game.
It's not like that Call of Duty side mission or something like that. Like
Right.
it's just the whole thing.
Yeah, the $30 game that you can play on your TV, and still enjoy the hell out of because it's an amazing game. There's a free patch that'll convert it all to VR.
That's awesome. When did Omega Collection come out? That was like, was that
This year.
This year?
I mean, sorry, 2017.
27? Was it early or late? Was it?
I don't remember.
Okay.
It was. It's
Long enough ago that it's probably on sale though.
I mean, it's $30 or less. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's
it slipped out whenever they released it, to the same way this patch slipped out, right? Sort of under the radar. And I'm very happy that I noticed and that I downloaded it and that I played it because
that's awesome. I might,
go get that.
I might have to grab that just to check it out because
Yeah.
that's just speed and colors and music, combined with VR.
And
So
I didn't hurl.
Yeah, that's a
Maybe
good sign.
you will.
Yeah, if you want to try the
It's a
challenge
good
of
box quote.
will you hurl or not, you can check that out.
I didn't hurl, but maybe you will. IGN.
So the opposite of driving very fast in a triangle through lasers is, of course, sitting on an island in virtual reality. There's a game called Island Time VR, which is out today, which is a very small scale survival game where you're shipwrecked on an island with Greg Miller as a crab. The Greg Miller, you know,
He voices the crab.
Greg
I was gonna say,
Miller.
his voice or his likeness.
I mean, I'm not going to pass judgment here. I don't think he's not a very crab-like man, but you know, he's it's his voice. He's doing kind of like a very kind of goofy, like kind of like Rick and Morty-ish sort of voice. But basically, he's sort of the narrator. He's your companion on this island, and you know, it's a small-scale survival game. So think like, you know, Don't Starve or something, where you have to catch fish and build a fire and everything, but you're basically stuck on this tiny little island in one spot. So you're looking around and moving around, and you've got a wristwatch on your virtual hand that you can look at. I screwed around with that for a minute, but I was using one of the office setups, and I kept trying to like catch fish, but I'd be punching somebody's desk, so I stopped doing that.
This game.
Yeah, this is so it's super cute.
Where's Greg? Do we see him?
Well, you can hear him in the game. He voices the crab. I don't know if you can see him here. There he is. There's the crab, and there's a boombox.
Oh yeah, that's Greg. Totally.
He's got the
I don't know.
eyebrows, yeah.
If you're a Beyond listener and you miss having Greg's voice in your ear and you're not listening to his 8 other podcasts, you can now have him as a virtual crab. Also out tomorrow or today or whatever is a VR game that nobody saw coming, which is Crisis on the Planet of the Apes. This is interesting. This is a VR Planet of the Apes game where I'm unclear exactly what it is. There's a trailer that dropped at the very tail end of February that I saw get no coverage. It looks a little bit wonky, like a lot of the kind of movie tie-in VR games we've seen so far.
Is this running off of the engine of like the Planet of the Apes adventure, kind of point and click
Honestly,
adventure
can't
game?
tell. There's a trailer that shows basically nothing.
I mean, is it a game or is it like an experience
I
thing?
Can't really. I mean, it says game. What's the difference exactly?
So glad we did our research.
But it's out as of this episode.
No, that's what I'm saying is I can't do the
Exactly.
research
There
because
isn't any.
there's no coverage of it. And this is the second time this has happened with the Planet of the Apes games, because we talked about this last time. They accidentally dropped the adventure game, which came out of
right.
nowhere. It showed up it was like available now on PSN. I was like, how have we not heard of this? We haven't like previewed it. We haven't seen like a trailer. We haven't seen anything. So I just downloaded it. And later that day they were like, we put that up by accident. Get that off the store. So they like
Please delete that. And it's like,
Yeah.
no, I already got it.
which was really strange, which makes me wonder what the hell's going on over at Fox Next, that's the studio that the Fox-owned studio that's been publishing Planet of the Apes games. They are theoretically working on something involved with aliens. They're also theoretically doing X-Men stuff. And so far, they've just secretly released a couple of Planet of the Apes games, and I
hope they keep doing that. It's a great strategy.
Yeah.
Just
stealth
they
launches.
stealthily do it and they make us talk about it in the show as a result.
That's true. I look forward to checking out the new X-Men and Aliens games, I don't know, like 8 to 10 hours before they're released without any fanfare or knowing about anything whatsoever.
Yeah, why would you promote something like that? I don't.
Here's the thing about Planet of the Apes. It is not at all based on a trilogy of multi-million-dollar blockbuster films. So I could see why this fleggling indie title has to just slide under the radar.
Like
like that.
what's going on over there?
I don't know.
Tax write-offs.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. I would love to. I love Planet of the Apes. Like, I love the original movie. It's one of my favorites of all time. It pretty much got me into sci-fi, probably around the same time Star Wars did. I cherish it. I would love new games. Looks like we're getting them, so that's great. That all works out. But again, like, it'd be nice to know a little more. And for all the people that worked on it, they'd probably appreciate that too.
So someone tell us about it.
Yeah. We did a bit on Up at Noon last week, basically being like, is X-Men video games dead? Like, what's going on with that? And not even 3 hours after we put that up, there was an article that Game Informer put up with the VP of Fox Next talking about the process of getting, X-Men characters and the kind of the licenses and that tangled web of all that nonsense. And so they are clearly working on new games and doing some other stuff. I like the idea of there being more VR stuff coming out that's licensed tie-ins, because I mean maybe that's where like licensed games go, is VR is kind of like a promotional arm.
We got that weird Spider-Man VR thing to
The Batman
promote
one too.
Homecoming.
The Arkham one.
The Arkham one was awesome.
That was like a properly treated one.
I would genuinely love the team that worked on that to work on X-Men thing. And I'll repeat the same thing I said on like Up at Noon when like there's an Avengers game coming out or a Marvel game coming out, people are always like, where are the X-Men? But when an X-Men game comes out, nobody ever goes for the Avengers because the X-Men are enough. Right. And so, like, I would love a VR X-Men game.
Yeah, that'd be cool as hell.
Even if it was just like an experience.
Yeah, I don't know what's going to happen
intended.
with experience. But no, with the Planet of the Apes stuff, it's really, really baffling that they're just kind of like just unceremoniously kind of just throwing this out there. I don't know if it's terrible. I don't know if this is a really bad VR thing that sucks and we should
Is it a
not play
tie-in
it.
for like a home video release? When did that movie come out?
That came out on home video like last fall.
Yeah, it was
It's
a
been
while
out
ago.
for a while. There's nothing.
Yeah.
There's nothing lined up with it. Andy Serkis did this huge presentation at GDC with Epic, talking about like real time mocapping in Unreal, which was really interesting.
Which they probably did not use for this project.
No, I don't know what this is, and it's just really really unusual to see something so like high profile as this just get crapped out there.
Well, let's one of us jump on it. And
Yeah, I mean, as long as
try
I
it
have
out.
the stolen PSVR unit from the office, I might as well try
So
it out.
Crisis on the Planet of the Apes, the
give it a
secret
shot.
PlayStation VR Planet of the Apes game that you can own for your very own self. Unless, of course, it's not supposed to be out yet, which is entirely possible. Caleb, thank you for joining us and talking about Wipeout VR. Big thanks to Zach Ryan for jumping on, too. You can find us all on Twitter. I'm Max Scoville. Brian is Agent Bizzle. Caleb is...
I'm just me, man.
Just Caleb Lawson?
I'm Caleb Lawson.
Caleb Lawson. And
So easy.
Zach is Zacharias D. We will be back next week. But in the meantime, PAX East is this weekend. If you are there, a bunch of people from IGN are going to be running around, including Marty and Alana and Andrew Goldfarb, as well as Marietta Sanchez. The four of them are all on a panel together on Sunday, the 4th at... The 4th? That can't be right. No, Sunday with a whatever at 12:30 p.m. in the Albatross Theater. And I asked Marty what it was about, and he said, talking about the gams. So either legs or video games. Up to you to decide which.
My guess is there's an E in there.
Yeah, probably.
I hope they rank legs. I think
Marty's-
Kratos has some great ones.
Marty's busy just really writing lots of other letters elsewhere, so I don't know. Anyway, thank you for listening, and good night. Beyond.